This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Questions orales. Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
More proof today that this weak Prime Minister, has lost control of spending. The Auditor General reports that his government gave out $3.5 billion of so-called CEBA loans to companies that did not qualify, a total of 77,000 of them. That's 10% of all recipients. On top of that, they then gave a massive implementation contract to high-priced consultants at Accenture who cost $200 million and farmed out a lot of the work to Brazil. Isn't it more proof that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost or the corruption?
The Honourable Minister for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises.
Mr. Speaker, I find it ironic because for the member from the Mission, Maskey Fraser, actually sent me a letter advocating for CEBA loans to support a small business in his own riding. You see, Mr. Speaker, he understands the value of the CEBA loans because it was a lifeline for small businesses during an unprecedented time, and so we're going to continue to help support businesses, keep their doors open, keep their lights on, and keep their employees working. Mr. Speaker, I find it's unfortunate because this is another example of a letter that the Leader of the Opposition did not know about.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, our members champion their constituents who are eligible for assistance. Not 77,000 companies that should not have received the $3.5 billion in misspent dollars. All this while Canadians are starving. Today, the hunger report is out from Feed Ontario, and there have been 1 million Ontarians who lined up 7 million times at the food bank after this Prime Minister brought in a carbon tax on the truckers and farmers who bring us our food. When will they axe the tax?
The Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Social Development.
Mr. Speaker, of course, we thank Feed Ontario and the food banks across this country who do amazing work. Let me quote from the report that was just mentioned. In June 2022, those over the age of 75 received a permanent 10% increase in old age security alongside inflationary increases. After that change, the percentage of food bank visitors who were seniors began to decrease. This, in addition to the measures we put forward for families, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to deliver for Canadians while they oppose at every opportunity.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, over the last 5 years, food prices in Canada have increased 37% faster than in the United States. That gap opened after the introduction of the carbon tax, which this government now, with the NDP's help, wants to quadruple. The consequence is that in the last 4 years, food bank use in Ontario is up 86%, and 1 in 4 children go to school hungry, according to this government's own data. So why won't they axe this crazy plan to quadruple the carbon tax? In fact, why not axe the tax altogether?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, yet another example of the Conservative leader talking about one thing and doing another. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to supporting children, we have been negotiating school food agreements that are helping actually 200,000 children across this country, and yet the Conservative leader is opposed to that. He talks about lowering taxes, but last week he made every single one of his MPs vote against a GST tax cut for Canadians. He also talks about wanting to hold an opposition day. But we gave him an opportunity today and he ran away from it. Mr. Speaker, that's what weakness looks like when it comes to leadership. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Just a few short years, the Prime Minister has lost control of the deficit of immigration and of our border. He gave us a 2,500% increase in the number of unprocessed refugee claims, and he still thinks that 3 million temporary residents are going to leave this country voluntarily. Canada is staring down the barrel at 25% tariffs thanks to his open border policies, his free drugs for everyone plan, and his economic vandalism. The Prime Minister can mitigate that all today. Where's the Canada First plan to keep our borders safe?
The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Citizenship and Refugees.
Mr. Speaker, these people just aren't serious. She supports the Leader of the Opposition who sat idly by in government while they cut money to border enforcement at the Canada-U.S. borders, cut at the immigration refugee border. And for those of them that are saying this is ancient history, we proposed an asylum reform package in May, and you know what the Conservatives did and the clapping seals in the back did at the Finance Committee? They voted against it and voted it down. They can support us in our asylum reform if they so choose. I encourage them to do so.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Speaker, they've been in government for 9 years. They've known for years that immigration was out of control. They knew for years that asylum claims were out of control, and they knew for years that our border was broken. Right. None of what newly elected President Trump has been campaigning on was a secret. And the Prime Minister even threw that minister under the bus for his incompetence in immigration. If we're going to save Canadian jobs, we need a plan yesterday to fix the disorder at the border. So I'll ask again, where is the Canada First plan to keep our border safe?
Here, here. The Honourable Minister for Citizenship, Refugees and Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, this is from the gleeful authors of the Barbaric Practices snitch line. That was their approach to immigration when they last had a chance. We have been very serious with President Trump about our intention to secure the border. It is something that we clearly intend to do. They have an opportunity to do a number of things, and that is to support any asylum reform that we put in front of the House. I encourage them to break their silliness in the House and to do so.
Right on. The Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, this NDP Liberal government has broken our borders. They brought in 3 million temporary residents that need to leave Canada in the next year. But they have no way to know if they will actually leave. Will they go back home? Will they stay here illegally? Will they cross over the U.S. border? And by the way, the President-elect has made it very clear that there are no more free rides for our broken borders. The bottom line is, these Liberals don't know. Mr. Speaker, we need a Canadian plan, for a Canada First plan to fix our broken borders. Where is it?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, one of the first things in our plan was to reverse some of the draconian cuts that the previous Conservative government made to the brave women and men who work in Canadian border services. We take the issue of border integrity and border security seriously, as do the Americans. Our discussion on Friday evening with our American friends, Mr. Speaker, was very much about the joint work that we could continue to do together. That work has been done for decades between Canadian and American law enforcement. It has kept both countries safe and secure, and we're prepared to continue to do more as well.
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister went to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring and returned with absolutely nothing. All while there's serious gaps in our immigration system. For example, there are over 260,000 unprocessed refugee claims right now in the system. The Liberals are paying out billions of dollars every year for hotels, food, and medical costs for these claimants. They're even allowed to work while they wait nearly 4 years to be processed. Why would people leave Canada voluntarily when they can hitch themselves to this NDP Liberal gravy train? Mr. Speaker, where is the Canada First plan to keep our borders secure?
Before I recognize the Honourable Minister, I just want to encourage all members on all sides of the House, please, out of respect for those who do depend on simultaneous translation, please allow them to hear the questions and the answers which are given in the House by not taking the floor when you're not recognized by the Speaker. The Honourable Minister for Citizenship, Immigration and Refugees.
While the Leader of the Opposition was in his basement figuring out what rhyme to put up on Twitter to express his displeasure with the government, the Prime Minister of Canada was meeting with Donald Trump, our most important partner. That is responsible. At the same time, when he's not doing that in his basement, Mr. Speaker, he's skipping around the Greater Toronto Area, promising everyone and anyone visas to this country and not to deport them. That is not responsible. That's not serious. We plan to be serious.
The honourable member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Speaker, for 8 consecutive years, food bank usage has risen in Ontario, a timeline that matches the corruption and incompetence of the NDP Liberal government. They caused the cost of living crisis, a crisis where even 25% of Ontarians who have jobs need to use the food bank. Canadians deserve relief from this cost of living crisis. So will the Prime Minister cancel his plans to quadruple the carbon tax and call a carbon tax election now?
The Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Youth.
Well, great news, Mr. Speaker. Last week I was in PEI where we announced another province that has signed on to the National School Food Program. That's 184,000 kids this school year that will receive food at school. Almost 1.5 million more meals at school, Mr. Speaker, for a program that the Leader of the Opposition contends doesn't exist. I challenge him to ask those 184 children who are getting food at school. They'll school him, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's the NDP Liberals that have caused this cost of living crisis. More than 1 million Ontarians had to use a food bank last year. The NDP Liberals still can't do basic math. They still don't understand that if you tax the farmer who grows the food and tax the trucker who ships the food, you're taxing the families who then buy the food. So this Prime Minister has completely lost touch with reality. So will he take a walk in the snow and call a carbon tax election now?
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative members of Parliament are so ridiculous. They had an opportunity today to put forward a vote of the confidence in the government, and they decided not to, Mr. Speaker. So yet again, we see Conservative MPs talking out of one side of their mouth, but when it comes time to acting, they just can't deliver. Mr. Speaker, we are here to work for Canadians, and we're doing real things that are delivering for real Canadians, like school food programs, like the Canada Child Benefit, like dental care, that are helping Canadians make ends meet while all they do is puff hot air. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. The honourable member from Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Speaker, while the Liberals try to distract Canadians with tax tricks on Christmas trees and alcohol, more than 1 million Ontarians turn to the food bank to feed themselves. Food bank use has risen in 8 of the 9 years this NDP Liberal government has been in power. In the last 2 years alone, food bank usage in Ontario has risen by 73%. Wow. Worse, almost 25% of those food bank users had jobs, providing more evidence that the Prime Minister's cost of living crisis is deepening. Canadians have had enough, Speaker. Will the Prime Minister do the right thing? Call a carbon tax election right now.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Giving a tax break to Canadians is real, Mr. Speaker. When you go to the cash, when you're trying to buy your kids Christmas presents, you're not going to pay GST. When you go to cash at the grocery store, you're not going to pay GST on everyday items, Mr. Speaker. When you go to the restaurant, either. This is real money back in the pockets of Canadians. The Conservatives talk about vulnerable Canadians who are having a rough time. They vote against support for Canadians on every single occasion. They stand up in this House and oppose a tax break. They're opposing a tax cut, Mr. Speaker. The Conservative Party of Canada, they've lost all sense.
I agree with the NDP leader who said the Liberal government will always step in to make sure unions have no power. The minister's Section 107 referrals took away workers' rights to strike. As a result of this, Conservatives believe that this Liberal government has lost the confidence of the House of Commons. Now, this puts the NDP and the NDP leader in a tough spot. Will he support his own words, support workers, or continue to prop up this NDP Liberal government? Or will the government throw their coalition buddy a line and call a carbon tax election?
Order. Order. The Honourable Minister of Labour and Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, you would think this was not from the party that supported the anti-union oppressive Bill C-377 and Bill C-525. You would think this wasn't from the party who has in its own policy handbook the fact that they will be bringing in right-to-work Alabama-style legislation into this House. You would think that that wasn't the party that refused to debate that very motion this morning in this House of Commons.
Order. The Honourable Member from Dufferin-Caledon.
So his defense of his decision to take away a worker's right to strike is to talk about some things from a few years ago. Unions have unilaterally condemned the Section 107 referrals, and the NDP leader said he intervenes to take away unions' power. That's true. He took away the Teamsters' right to strike. He took away the ILWU's 514's right to strike. But when Unifor 1541 asked him to intervene to prevent union busting, this minister disappears. But the leader of the NDP has a choice to make. Will they keep propping up these guys that make these anti-worker decisions, or will he just stand with his words and vote against?
I'm going to ask all members, please, to remind themselves that they have to keep their voices down so that those who participate using translation can hear the interpretation. The Honourable Minister of Labour and for Seniors.
You would think that wasn't the party that opposed 10 sick days for employees in federally regulated industries. You would think that that was a party that didn't have right-to-work Mississippi-style legislation in its policy platform. You would think that wasn't the party whose very leader decried the involvement of unions in the procurement and other processes. Mr. Speaker, this Conservative Party is anti-worker. They've proved it on every single occasion that they're able to do it, and we will always stand for workers in this country.
The Honourable Member from Peterborough-Kawartha.
Today, the truth will be revealed. The Conservatives have put forward a non-confidence motion using the quote from the NDP leader where he said the Prime Minister is greedy and anti-worker. So what will it be? Will the leader of the NDP sell out Canadians yet again, or has that Prime Minister made another backroom deal that puts both of their lust for power over the rights of Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Seniors and for Labour.
I guess that member is back from announcing the housing projects in her riding that she voted against in this House of Commons. It is a joke, Mr. Speaker. It is a sick joke to watch these Conservatives line up behind this leader and his fake, false bravado putting motions on the floor of this House. Then we ask them to debate those very motions. What do they say? No, Mr. Speaker. They refuse to debate their own motion. They will not debate help for Canadians. They will not debate tax cuts. They will not debate any support for Canadians in this House of Commons. This is a sick joke.
Order. Order. L'ordre, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please.
Order. For Calgary Forest Lawn.
The Auditor General exposed $3.5 billion for ineligible CEBA loans thanks to this incompetent Liberal NDP government. They were too incompetent to run this program themselves, so they gave a sole source contract to Accenture, a multinational corporation that gave most of the work to Brazilians, not Canadians. Canadians got taken to the cleaners for more than $300 million. Why are third-party contractors running this government and covering up ministers' incompetence?
Here, here. Good job. Good job.
The Honourable Minister for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises.
Mr. Speaker, it's nice to know that there exists a report that the opposition can read without a security clearance. The member opposite and his party claim every single time that they care about small businesses, when in fact every single time we put efforts and support forward for small businesses, they always vote against it and decline everything that we do. The fact is, Mr. Speaker, the CEBA loans were there and helped nearly 900,000 small businesses keep their lights on, keep their doors open, and keep their employees working. We will continue to be there to support small business, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Mission Mashpee Fraser Canyon.
Mr. Speaker, today the Auditor General released a bombshell report on the Canada Emergency Business Account. It highlights serious inefficiencies, a lack of government oversight, and $3.5 billion in losses to ineligible recipients. So how did we get here? The report outlined that the third-party program administrator, Accenture, set their own pricing, wrote their own contracts, ran procurement, and received 19 uncompetitive contracts for $313 million. Why can't the Liberals administer a government program without breaking a conflict of interest law?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises.
Mr. Speaker, I already talked about the fact that there exists a report that they can read that they don't need security clearance for. So here's the real bombshell, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to security clearance, there are more allegations that have come forward with regards to foreign interference in the Conservative Leadership Party race. Yet the Conservative leader chooses to ignore these security breaches in his own party. If the Conservative leader actually cared, he'd have nothing to hide. So, Mr. Speaker, can the leader of the Conservative Party get the clearance, take the briefing, and protect this country?